So over the weekend, the Libertarian Party officially nominated Chase Oliver as their presidential candidate for 2024. And it didn't take long for the internet to be completely bombarded with a bunch of misinformation about him. Considering most of it is coming from conservatives and right-wingers, I'm gonna go out on a limb and suggest that Donald Trump was sizing up all the Libertarian nominees so he can immediately start posting smear tactics against them. One of the pieces of misinformation I keep hearing is that Chase Oliver is anti-Second Amendment. The reality is he's the most pro-gun candidate in the race right now. In fact, he is heavily involved with the Pink Pistols of Atlanta, Georgia, which is a pro-LGBT guns rights activist group. Trump, on the other hand, well, he had this to say about red flag law.
Take the firearms first and then go to court.
Take the firearms first and go through due process later. Yeah, good luck with your Second Amendment if you're voting Republican. Donald Trump literally passed more gun control than Barack Obama. That's a fact, you can Google it. Another piece of misinformation I keep hearing is that he's open borders. While he does want to reform our immigration policy, he's not open borders. He just wants to go back to what it was 100 years ago. If somebody just wants to come here for a better life or to work, they should be able to do that. And shouldn't take months of processing and government bureaucracy just to come here legally. Then there are those who are complaining he wants to abolish ICE. What's the big deal? It's another alphabet soup agency. What's next? You're gonna complain because a libertarian wants to get rid of the ATF or the IRS? I'm not sure if y'all noticed what's been going on with Argentina under Javier Milei, but abolishing federal agencies is probably a good idea. After all, it's doing wonders in Argentina, so where's the problem? Even if you think there should be some kind of agency to enforce immigration policies, why does there need to be a completely separate agency to do that? FBI, CIA, Homeland Security, those are 3 agencies that could probably do the same job as ICE. And one of the most ridiculous accusations I keep hearing is that he wants to take kids from their parents if they refuse to let their kids transition. For those who don't know me, I am probably the biggest father's rights advocate within the Libertarian Party. And I met with Chase Oliver back in December when he came to Baton Rouge and asked him about repealing Title 4D. But even though he didn't publicly endorse repealing Title 4D from the Social Security Act, he did make it very clear that the government should not have it so easy removing kids from their parents. Hell, Chase is currently working with Spike Cohen and his fight against the state of Georgia, who is currently accusing innocent parents of child abuse just so they can remove custody of the child from the parents. Trust me, if Chase had any intention of making it easier for the government to remove custody from a loving parent, I would not be endorsing him. And if you think otherwise, you don't know too much about me or the kind of stuff I speak on. Aside from misinformation, there's a lot of things that are being spoken about him that are completely out of context. For example, everybody's dogging on him for supporting mask mandates when Donald Trump himself enforced the mask mandates, as did Joe Biden. And to be fair, the majority of you people who are criticizing mask mandates now in 2024 were perfectly fine with them back in 2020, so you have no room to talk. The only difference between you and Chase Oliver is that you're not significant enough for people to dig into your social media history and drag out everything you said at the time. Then there are people criticizing him for being a former liberal Democrat. So what? I don't know who all needs to hear this, but nobody is born a libertarian or any other political ideology. The reality is the majority of people who identify as libertarians today are former Democrats and Republicans, conservatives and liberals, progressives, so on and so forth. Hell, Thomas Sowell himself was once a communist.
I went to the University of Chicago as a Marxist. After a year of studying under Milton Friedman, I was still a Marxist.
So yeah, if you've ever quoted Thomas Sowell, you have no right criticizing Chase Oliver. Then there are other people complaining because he's okay with kids going to drag shows. I'm not sure who all needs to hear this, but being a drag queen is not inherently sexual. Are you seriously going to sit here and tell me that you wouldn't let your kid watch Mrs. Doubtfire? Hell, if Robin Williams was still alive, most of you would be perfectly okay taking your kids to have him read to your child dressed as Mrs. Doubtfire. Are there drag shows that are inherently sexual? Absolutely, and kids should not be going to those particular drag shows. And yes, there are drag queens that have been exposed for being child predators, but there's also been Catholic priests who have been exposed for being child predators as well. By that same logic, you might as well generalize all Catholic priests by the same standard. By the same logic y'all are using, You're a terrible parent and a groomer for taking your child to church every Sunday. Now granted, he is okay with giving children hormone blockers, which I personally disagree with. But his position is based on medical privacy and medical freedom, not because he wants to groom children. And then there are those of you who are complaining because he's pro-choice. I'm pro-choice too. If you have spent enough time with any libertarian circles, what you will notice is that abortion is by far the most divisive issue among libertarians. The way I personally look at it is it doesn't matter where you fall on the abortion debate. You're okay with violating the NAP in one way or another. If you're pro-life, you're okay with the government interfering with an individual's medical privacy. And the reality is, most pro-lifers are even willing to make exceptions for cases of SA or when the mother's life is in danger. And personally, I just don't think the government is fit to make the judgment calls in these type of situations. But more importantly, while I do agree it should be left up to the individual, tax dollars shouldn't be funding it either. So even though Chase Oliver and myself are both pro-choice, we also still want to get rid of Planned Parenthood. Tax dollars should not be funding your abortions. And while I have not been able to get Chase Oliver to take a stand on this issue, I think if a woman can terminate an unwanted pregnancy, a man should have a right to sign away all custody rights and financial responsibility to raise that child. Because if a woman can terminate it while it's still in the womb, a man should at least have the right to abandon it. And finally, people keep complaining because they think Chase Oliver is just a leftist. He's not. But because he's a gay man and an activist for the LGBT community, the identity politics attacks that the left are hopelessly reliant on in this day and age aren't going to work on it. And when it comes to the economic side of things, he is very much a free market capitalist. For well over a decade now, leftists have relied on smear tactics by accusing their political opponents of being homophobic, racist, or so on and so forth, while also attaching these labels to capitalism. So by nominating a more progressive libertarian who is openly gay, that takes 90% of the identity politic crap off the table. And it's gonna be easier to persuade to individuals that free market capitalism is not anti-LGBT, it's not racist, it's not sexist, and it's not fascist. More importantly, he's demonstrating time and time again that being anti-fascist is pointless if you're pro-Marxist. More importantly, y'all really need to stop complaining because Chase is more left-leaning when libertarianism itself spans the entire left-right political spectrum. All libertarians care about is maximizing individual liberties while reducing the scope of the government in the individual's life. And it doesn't matter if you perceive Chase Oliver as left-wing because he primarily focuses on maximizing individual liberty over government authority. But let's talk about this from a strictly strategic standpoint. Trump supporters actually like Trump. They have no intention of changing their mind. Biden supporters just hate Trump and don't want to see him get back into office, period. Biden's base is a lot softer and easier to sway away from their candidate. And as such, having a quote left-wing candidate like Chase Oliver is going to do a better job of swaying Biden voters than anything else. Now the radical left, they don't care about Biden. They've already agreed to vote for Jill Stein and the Green Party. And the core disillusioned Democrats are probably going to be voting RFK. Chase Oliver, from a strictly strategical standpoint, is by far the best candidate we could have picked for this election. Now personally, I would have preferred to nominate somebody like Spike Cohen, but he simply didn't run this election. But Chase has already proven himself to be a capable candidate from the 2022 Senate race. In a nutshell, most of the criticism I'm hearing about Chase Oliver is coming from butthurt Trump supporters who are mad that we booed him relentlessly at the national convention. And those of you within the Libertarian Party who have a problem with Chase Oliver are the very reason people call libertarians Republican light, and frankly, I'm not going to miss you. Bottom line, Republicans are red, Democrats are blue. Neither major party cares about me or you. So be bold, vote gold. Chase Oliver 2024.